Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast on the playoff edition, first installment of the playoff edition episodes with your hosts, Jefferson Belford and Brian Hernandez. Brian, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. We were just talking about before the show, slept in a not so nice hotel and everything. So, feeling a little tired and all that. But other than that, pumped today, man. Today's the first time we're talking about playoff basketball this season. It's super exciting. A lot has been happening, a lot to cover today. Jeff, how are you doing?
Not too great. Obviously, with the series,
Yeah.
that I will get into the details about that, but you know, not too optimistic about my
Yeah.
team's chances. But there's a lot of teams to talk about,
Yeah.
and a lot to unpack in this episode.
All right, I'm excited to get your thoughts, especially like we just talked about the Nets, and because I actually don't know your thoughts at all because we haven't connected about this, so this is gonna be really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Just rolling into everything that we're going to get into today is first we'll recap some of the series, well, all of the series. Then we'll go into some of our predictions to all the way up until the finals. Then we'll go over some of our biggest surprise of the first round and our biggest disappointments of the first round. And Brian, are you ready?
Yeah, man, let's get into it.
All right, so let's start off west. First series we're going to talk about is the Phoenix Suns Pelicans series. Um, Phoenix currently has a 2-1 lead in the series. Brian, anything that's sticking out about that series for you right now?
Nothing honestly too crazy. I think the biggest so one, I think everyone expects the Suns to win, and even with this injury to Devin Booker and if he comes back at all or not, I think everyone still expects him to win. But what's kind of been a little bit surprising is like Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum doing what they're doing. Like these guys are balling out. They're playing really well. And just imagining like where could this series actually be if Zion was playing? Like this is the Pelicans looking really well, really good without even full power right now. So that's mainly my main thought. Nothing too crazy. Um yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely a coming to age like series for the Pelicans. I
Yeah.
still don't think much is going to come from their side of it. But
Yeah.
I do think that they are showing what they can be.
Yeah.
And when adding Zion to that, it could be even better, right? Um, Biggest thing I would say that I have enjoyed in seeing what they've been doing is, like you said, being able to have Brandon Ingram coming to look like a star, you know.
Mhm.
And then on the Sun side of things, like just having Chris Paul show the reason why he's on this team while Devin Booker is gone, and they're not missing a beat, even though they lost the game that Devin went down.
Yeah.
I still don't think they're missing a beat in what their team truly is.
I mean, we've even seen it in the regular season of Devin Booker and Chris Paul have missed time, and Suns never really missed exactly like missed a beat, missed a step, whatever you want to say. Like they've been pretty fantastic. The team is extremely deep. Um, yeah, I don't really think there's too much more to say here. Definitely a lot more exciting matchups than this one here.
Definitely. So the next series we'll be talking about is the 4 and 5 seeds, the Dallas Mavericks and Utah Jazz series. The series is tied at 2 apiece as of last night on a Rudy Gobert game-winning uh, alley hoop from
Yeah.
Devin Donovan Mitchell. So, what do you feel about this series, Brian?
So this one, I thought once we got the news that Luka Doncic was going to miss at least the first two games or whatever it was, like I thought it was kind of over. I've kind of been pretty strong on my stance of the Mavericks of not having a ton of talent outside of Luka Doncic. But boy, was I wrong. And in terms of Jalen Brunson looking fantastic leading this team without Luka, it's it's really surprising to see how well they're doing, at least for me. Because even we had, I'm sure Davis, our resident Mavericks expert, I asked him the question of like, do you think like Jalen Brunson can be that number two to Luca? And he didn't really think so. And like we're seeing here, even without Luca, this man was going off, playing fantastic. I think this is kind of more of the story of what the Utah Jazz are doing in terms of just not really looking fantastic. And uh it's to me it's kind of like, all right, I think we kind of see the ceiling of this team, not a championship caliber team. uh I would blow it up if I was them. We could talk more about how that looks like, but before that, Jeff, what do you think about the series?
Yeah, I know. I agree with the Dallas take that if Luca was gone, I did think that the series was going to be an issue. But luckily, Luca's back. He was in Game
Yeah.
4. Fortunately, they lost, but still, they still look like a team in my mind that I surmised a couple weeks back that I could see a run in them.
Yeah.
And Jalen Brunson just picking up the load when Luca was down just shows how much faith I have in this team and why I think that they are going to make easy work of these guys and find a way to figure it out and finish this series. I agree about the Jalen Brunson take as well. Because a couple days ago I was watching NBA TV and they had Devin Harris on, and Devin Harris was on that team when Luca and Jalen Brunson were both rookies, and he spoke about how everyone knew that Luca was going to be the star, but there's just something about Jalen Brunson that we all knew he was like going to be a leader for this team, and he's showing that. He's showing that right now. He's showing the reason why he's as important to this team and why he's able to put up 40 in game 2 and shoot the lights out and find the right players on their team during this playoff series.
He's also, I mean, if you think about it, this man's playing for his contract right now. Jalen Brunson is going to get a big payday after what he's doing in these playoffs. We've seen it time and time again where players just become outstanding during the playoffs, during their contract year. And next thing you know, they get the big bucks. And I don't think it's going to turn bad like some other performances. Like the first one that always comes to my mind is Bismack Biyombo of like playing well with the Raptors and then getting like a giant contract and not looking too great. But Jalen Brunson, this man's gonna get big paycheck, looking really well. Um, yeah, this is probably one of the more fun series because I can kind of see it going either way, but I'm still like, I'm I used to be so high on Utah, but after these last couple games, like not so much more. Like they missed a huge chance to capitalize on Luca being gone.
Yeah, they just for me, I always felt that I going into the playoffs, even when I thought about the Luca thing and said that Luca wouldn't be in the series, I still thought that Utah just showed that they didn't have what it takes to go on a deep enough run. Second round is not going to cut it for these guys.
Yeah,
If they want to, because they had a team that was the number one seed last year, and
yeah,
they showed what they could become, and they showed what they were able to become. It's like, why would they not be able to continue with that at this pace, into this season?
yeah, yeah. It's really crazy. I always forget. they did have that number one seed, and like they looked so good, and just a huge downfall. A lot of the guys that they have just didn't live up to expectations.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on
So
to the next?
yes, the next series that we'll be speaking of is the 3-6 series with the Warriors and the Nuggets. The Warriors have a commanding 3-0 lead in this series. Brian, what is your thoughts about this specific series?
This one is, I heard on the JJ Redick podcast not too long ago, the Old Man the Three, of like, this is what kind of makes you think of postponing the MVP voting, because we're about to see probably the most likely MVP guy, Jokic, probably gonna get swept in the playoffs, and it's kind of like, does he deserve to be MVP if he gets swept in the playoffs? But at the same time, he is versing this Golden State team that is looking better than ever. They are so dynamic right now. Jordan Poole has really stepped it up at the end of last season, at the end of this season too. He kind of wasn't playing super well in the middle of the season, but really turned it up to the next level, especially in these playoffs. Man, that lineup where you have Draymond, Poole, Klay Thompson, Steph, like those four guys together just kind of look pretty next level. And I just feel so bad for Jokic. Of the Nuggets aren't a bad team. They're missing two of their number two player, their number three player, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. Like, if I feel so bad for Jokic, the man is so good. The man does so many things on the court, but just unlucky. Unlucky. What do you think about the series?
I agree. I feel that I kind of disagree with JJ Redick about the MVP
Okay.
voting, but
Yeah.
um, for me, it's more along the lines of like it sucks that Jokic has to go through this
Yeah.
alone without the star power. But it shows you literally why we always say or why we always feel that there's certain teams that just have that star presence that you believe they will figure it out with which type of players, which type of stars they have, and help them propel them in a series. You could
Yeah.
have an extremely good team, but like you need star power to close out these games to move on in your series. There's only a handful of teams that didn't have traditional star that
Yeah.
has. All right, we're back. A little technical difficulty there, but yeah. So with when you go into the playoffs, you know that it's going to be a star dynastic type of situation where you need to have those type of guys decide or be the deciding factors of whether you're moving on or if you're not. We all think about when I think about that, I think about like the infamous 3-1, the 3-1 series that the Warriors had over the Cavs. And
Mhm.
what decided that series, it wasn't tremendously about like the construction of the Cavs. It was they had the star power to overcome a 3-1 lead, you know?
Mhm.
So in this situation, that's where I feel for Jokic on that, but it's just the firepower that's coming from the Warriors is on another level that uh could you blame Jokic? Um Even if he eked out one game, like
Mhm.
I don't think that even if he wasn't able to eke out one game, I don't think that it's on him that they're just not able to compete with this team. It's just the way they are the current roster with all of the injuries that they have, how they're constructed. It's just not going to be a team like this in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's I mean, because we're kind of see it just like looking at him playing the game, like he's doing everything he can. He's putting ridiculous numbers up, and yet it's still like just not even close to be enough. So it's not his fault at all. Um, yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad. I would love to see him get some more luck because we talked about it this entire season. This Denver team, so much potential, just can't live up to it. Phew.
Agreed.
That's the
No problem. So heading into the last series of the Western Final, Western Conference is the series between the 2 seed Memphis Grizzlies and the 7 seed Minnesota Timberwolves. Arguably, are not even arguably, definitely the most competitive series out west. Um, Brian, what is your thoughts on this series currently?
Yeah, this one is actually probably one of the more. I mean, like you said, it's definitely the most competitive. It is the most interesting to me because we all saw what Memphis did in the regular season and how fantastic they did. And then we saw some pretty good ups and downs for Minnesota. And now we're really like looking at it and the series is tied 2-2. Memphis, are they? Can they lose this series? Like, is this a thing? At the end of the day, honestly, I still think they're going to win. But Jeff, you had this point a couple weeks or months back where you really talked about the experience factor of coming into play in the playoffs, and like, is this team actually ready to win a championship? Because we know like a team like Golden State is, we know a team like Phoenix is, and then even on the East side, there's all these other teams, but Memphis, like, I see them, they can put a really good fight against anyone, but it's just not. I don't know. Like, this is giving me a little bit of second thoughts here. But what do you think about this series so far?
I think the best way to think about this series is more along the lines of I still think that Grizzlies figure it out, right?
Yeah,
But it's um it's more of the growing woes of what a 7 game series would look like or feel like.
yeah,
Firepower like wise, like, and like having that power punch, so to speak, that the Grizzlies have been showing that the last couple of years with these plans that they've been in. But this is the
yeah,
first time now they're going up against a team and trying to figure out like what does it take to win 4 games against them,
yeah,
and that tremendously changes um, how you have to game plan and what you want to do, and picking what is your best advantages or what counters you're going to have in the series. So they're definitely feeling that. I don't think that this changes anything for them in my mind. But they truly are just figuring. This is a series in my mind. I
yeah.
think is a figuring it out series. But let's say they get into the next round, I don't think they're going to have as much problems because they've now had some experience with it.
I could see. I mean, if they were going against the next round against anyone else other than Golden State right now, I would definitely agree. But now I'm just looking at it like, if they win this series, if they eke it out, and you go against Golden State, who's just been on fire, they're gonna if think about it, if Golden State sweeps Denver, now they have all this rest time in between when Memphis is going through a potential 7 game series. Like, they're going to be more fresh and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, Memphis just went through a really tough fight. It's it's a little interesting there. I think what we do have to talk about though is more of like, is this more of a worry for Memphis? But I think it's actually probably more just props to Minnesota of how competitive they've been this entire series. Of, I really feel like they think they can win every single game, and they've been there. And then we've seen Karl Anthony Towns not had a good couple games here and there, and like, yet they're still they're competing. They're doing really well.
I agree. And actually, Cat had a pretty good game last night
Yeah,
to tie this series. So I agree. All
word.
right, now heading to the East, and starting with the 1 and 8 seed, the Miami Heat and Atlanta Hawks. The Miami Heat have a 2-1 lead currently. What is your thoughts about that series, Brian?
Man, Miami is really good at defense, and it's really interesting to see them. Or it's really interesting to see like the pickup of PJ Tucker is for Miami, being able to switch him onto Trey Young without any problems or anything like that, and then even just having like a center like Bam Adebayo where it makes switching extremely easy. Uh, Man, Miami looks pretty good right now. Trey Young at the moment, looking at the series, he's shooting 17% from three. like on he has 8 attempts a game, shooting 17%. There if there's any way that you can really beat this Atlanta Hawks team, which I mean, of course, they've had their ups and downs as well, but it's really stopping Trey Young and then attacking Trey Young. So they've been doing a really good job of getting good switches and attacking Trey Young just in general. And man, they look really good. What do you think so far?
Yeah, Miami looks dominant throughout the series. Obviously, Game 3, the Hawks were
Yeah,
able to get a win, but it's still it was like fighting. They had to fight to get that win, right?
yeah,
So because of that, I really do think that Miami continues what they're doing and move on pretty easily. Um, it's just now like the it goes back to the whole star dynamic
yeah,
thing that I was mentioning is that you have to keep in mind that Trey Young's still on the Hawks,
yep,
and if he turns it on a couple games, it could truly change the whole outlook of this series or like how this series is going to be played.
yeah,
Ultimately, right now, in my mind, some things already changed just by seeing them seeing themselves win that game 3. I think they're going to play a little bit more loose, a little bit more free when they get
sure.
into game 4, and that's what's going to make this an even more interesting series in my mind.
It's also it goes to show of like the power of like a good coach right now for especially like Miami being able to. I mean, we've seen so many times Atlanta is one of the more scary teams to verse just because you mentioned you got Trey Young, you have all this really crazy firepower where if they get hot, I saw a couple times in the series they just go Miami and Atlanta are going back to back, just shooting threes nonstop, and like it's really crazy, but Eric Spoelstra doing a really great job of doing his adjustments, and I think he's gonna. I think Miami's gonna be pretty good going forward, but that's more the coaching discussions for later on. But I'm ready for the next the next series if you want to go there.
Perfect. All right. So the next series is our 4 and 5 between the Philadelphia Sixers and the Toronto Raptors. The Sixers hold a 3-1 commanding series lead as of right now. Brian, what are your thoughts about this series?
This one, I I was talking to a coworker about this series. He's a Toronto fan, and I actually was like, I think Toronto can get this in like 6 or 7. Like, I think they have a really good chance. Looking at it now, I was definitely wrong. I mean, sure they're still in it, but like the Nick Nurse quote about like, oh, as we're 3-1 and people have done 3-1 before, so that's not a problem. Um, I think the biggest thing in this series probably was like Scotty Barnes getting hurt because Scotty Barnes is so good, but then as well of man Embiid pretty dominant, Maxi looking like he could really be that third option on that team. Um, I heard Zach Lowe talk about it before of like, and I actually agree with him in the sense of like, are we just kind of overthinking the Sixers of the dysfunction between Joel Embiid and James Harden and all that? Like, regardless of if these two guys play together extremely well, like that's just so much firepower. And we're looking at it right now. It's really hard for Toronto to stop them. Siakam had a few meh kind of games, but this last game he played really well. It's this is one of the ones that I expected a lot more competitiveness, but just sad it didn't really come to fruition. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I think this is one of the series where you could it's best to like keep in mind uh in the playoffs you need to be a little bit lucky, right?
Yeah,
And um the Raptors have been quite unlucky. They've had players and the Sixers on this hand as well too. They've
yeah,
had players that are now dealing with injuries that were sustained in series. You have Frank Van Vliet, having his knee issues. You have Scotty Barnes, even though he's back, he missed a couple games because he had his ankle stepped on by Embiid, and then Embiid now dealing with his torn ligament in his finger, are believed
yeah.
to have had a torn ligament in his finger. So like those type of things dictate how a series is going to go. Um, we'll just have to see and wait and see how potential injuries could change things. But like in my mind, like you mentioned, it's kind of hard to come back from. It's kind of hard to come back from a 3-1 series. It's even harder coming back. It's virtually impossible. Let's put it as that to come back when you're 3-0 in a series.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's just too much. And that's the thing. You can always sneak a game here and there, but generally in basketball, as we see, like the better team almost always wins. And yeah, it's gonna be very tough for the Toronto Raptors, which is they had a phenomenal year. They definitely outperformed a lot of expectations. So I don't think anything to be upset about long term, especially they have a really good core. But I'm talking about them like they're already gone, but we already know. So
All right.
next.
So our next series is the 3-6 matchup of the Milwaukee Bucks and the Chicago Bulls. Milwaukee has a 2-1 series lead as of right now. What are your thoughts about this series, Brian?
So this one is definitely not as crazy as the others. We talked about it a little bit before. Of like, if anything, if this is one series we're most disinterested in, I think it's probably this one of like Milwaukee. They have like such a good formula of you have Giannis drive to the rim, and then you just surround him with 3-point shooters, and like that's kind of all you need. So it's kind of it's not as fun to watch because it's the same thing over and over. But Chicago, surprisingly, at least to me, surprisingly, pulled out that last win, and they look good. I just still there's the thing that was going around about how Chicago there in the regular season how much they struggled against top 4 conference teams, and like they weren't beating good talent. So to see how that actually translates to here and them looking all right. The biggest question mark, though, and the opportunity, I guess, for Chicago is really with Chris Middleton going down. And Chris Middleton, such a huge part for the Bucks, being that number 2 option. It kind of opens the door a bit. So it definitely gets a little more exciting from here on, but I still think Milwaukee pulls it out. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's a cakewalk still in my mind for
Yeah.
Milwaukee Bucks. Giving them that demoralizing loss last on Friday. I think they beat them nearly by 40, and that's without Middleton. Just goes to show they're on a different league, different playing field than the Bulls. the Bulls can compete. They try to
Mhm.
compete in my mind, but it's already the writing's already on the walls for the Bulls in this season. Even though they had a really good season, it's hard having to play a team this this good, as a first round team. So I think the Bucks take it. Middleton being injured is definitely something to keep a mind on, and I'm thinking now for the whole playoffs, the
Yeah.
playoffs in whole. Um, it's actually the same, I believe it's the same injury that KD sustained. Was it the
Mm.
MCL? I think it was.
Yeah, sprained
Uh,
his MCL. Hmm.
so yeah, it's a sprained MCL, and that took KD out for a month. So um, actually, I think it had to been more than a month that it took KD out.
Hmm.
So, but we you don't want to rush someone back into a situation where they could get re-injured or make it
Yeah.
worse. So I think that at least for this series they're good, but like they should be thinking about what's in their best interest in keeping Middleton's health intact. But love the fight coming out, DeMar DeRozan
Hmm.
in the series to show up and try to do what he can to help his team, win the series. But ultimately, the firepower that's coming from the Bucks is too much in my mind.
Yeah. Nah, definitely agree.
Perfect. And finally, the last series to speak about is the 2 and 7 seed, the Boston Celtics and the Brooklyn Nets. Boston has a commanding 3-0 lead over the Brooklyn Nets. Brian, what are your thoughts on this series?
So for this one, since you're the expert here, I'm actually going to throw it back to you first because I want to hear your thoughts about this. Um, yeah, like, yeah, what do you think about this? This is crazy right now.
I'm not shocked at all because
Okay.
remember,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was just a few weeks ago that I did choose them, the Celtics, to be the ones that I saw going to the finals against
yeah,
Dallas. And you know, obviously I wish they came out with a lot more fight. There's my biggest thing is it's not even that they don't have fight. It's just there's just no adjustments being made to
yeah,
playoff basketball. And that's another key part about playoff basketball is you're going to have to beat someone 4 times, which means something has to change.
yeah.
Something you can't be the same team you've been all season long. You have to be versatile and be able to um, show your might in being versatile, right? The Nets are showing that not at all, and because of that, being is putting star players like Kevin Durant on their team at a disadvantage to be able to counter anything or do something that could tremendously alleviate some of the pressure off himself and you know carry these games. That's why game one is a good example of like what it could have been like with another star in this case Kyrie having the game that he had, even though Katie played not great in game one, it still showed that you could alleviate some of that pressure off of Katie and give him some chances. But you need more than just a Kyrie Irving going off to
Mhm.
keep defenders honest. You need to keep defenders honest. And you saw towards the end of the season and going into this playoffs that was the problem that was happening is there was no way that the Nets were keeping defenders honest because they were going to double team KD. They were going to put pressure on Kyrie Irving whenever those two guys saw the ball. And you live and die with whatever the other guys on the court does to you. So that's truly where it's an indictment of the season, the team, and ultimately it's an indictment on the coach and the coach not being able to see through that. While it's not like it's something new; it's the story we've been seeing for the last couple of weeks that this was going to be the way how teams are going to play you. So
Mhm.
there we go. And then you got to give kudos to the Celtics coach Ime Udoka, just pulling all the right strings, and he's thoroughly out coaching Steve Nash in this series, and it's showing in how they've been able to respond in games that they were close, and in games that they pulled away in as well.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing you mentioned there is just the straight fact that Steve Nash being completely outcoached right now. And there's that. And the biggest really surprise with this series, because although you've been very low on the Nets, I've been very high, and it's kind of similar to the Luca point of like you have Luca on your team, anything can happen. Thought you have Kevin Durant on your team, anything can happen. And right now, I think I even said after game one, like Kevin Durant had a bad game. How often is Kevin Durant gonna have two bad games in a row? And then that happened. All right, how often is gonna happen three bad games? And it's just like they're Boston's doing a really good job against KD. Jason Tatum's doing fantastic guarding him. It's a lot of it are. I wonder what are your thoughts in terms of because I heard Steve Nash. I think it was Steve Nash that talked about it of the amount of fatigue that KD and Kyrie are going through. What do you thought about the fatigue aspect?
I did see some reports about that as well, and I think that it's largely it's funny if that's actually coming from Steve Nash, because it's largely coming by the way how he has them play.
Yeah,
There's no sets being ran. There's nothing that's truly being generated as an offense to make life easier for the both of those guys. So that's why he's having to play them this much, and the amount of fatigue they're possibly going through. I know obviously it's playing a
I
factor
mean, they
into the
both got to
series,
be top.
but it's by the doing of not having good coaching. You
yeah,
know, you have to find ways to make it a little bit easier for your players that they don't have to play 40 minutes a game. You know, that's Tom Thibodeau like territory with
yeah,
um, pushing their players. You know, on the level he pushes players, and that's why you saw some of the times the issues that would come from while making it to the playoffs. Tom Thibodeau's teams that his players looked exhausted. You know,
yeah.
because they were going on this grind for some time.
Very true. It's so actually I pulled it up to find it real quick of yeah, it was Steve Nash after game 3 in the press conference. He mentioned of like Kyrie's fasting and Kevin has to play 40 plus minutes for 5-6 weeks after missing 6 and 7 weeks. So he's like, oh, I'm sure that takes a big role. He carried a huge burden. Okay, Kevin carried a huge burden for us, and Kyrie's as well since he's playing on the home and road and all that stuff. And he talked about like the fasting and all that. And then actually it's pretty funny of right afterwards, they asked Kevin Durant and Kyrie thoughts about it, and they're both like, "Nah, it's not fatigue. Like, I feel good playing." Kyrie's like, "My legs are under me. I'm good." And there, it just kind of goes to show like the dysfunction kind of right now, and like Kevin, or I mean Steve Nash. I think it's the writing's been on the wall, but like now his foot is like out the door essentially. Um, what do you think about uh the potential for Ben Simmons coming back, or Ben Simmons is coming back in game 4 for this next game, but like how do you think that can actually change anything?
This is a bad look. You don't need to do that. You don't at this point. It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't help anything in my mind. So I think that they should strongly consider just like not doing that.
Yeah, there definitely is kind of the thing of like the 3-0 lead right now, or the 3-0 deficit you're in right now. No one's ever came back from that before. No one's had, these really type of quality talents for like to be in this position. But at the end of the day, you kind of mentioned it before of like you don't really want to rush any of these guys back. And the reports are for like Ben Simmons, he's been pain free for like the last week or two. And it's like pain free for the last week or two. Like, or rather just have him ready for next season. I don't know. Um, Definitely kind of interesting there. And then even surprisingly, of Boston able to bring Robert Williams back in like 3 weeks is pretty insane. Um, Man, tough, very tough series. Like, so where do you think it went wrong for the Nets?
But I already said it. It's coaching.
Just coaching,
it
just
really,
strictly coaching.
it
You think
really
he
is
had,
coaching.
if you had a different coach in there, you think it just is a completely different story?
Yeah, because it just looks like they're playing street ball and
No.
this is the playoffs. Like it just does not look cohesive at all. I think Blake Griffin said it yesterday. They don't look like they're not playing like a cohesive unit. So in turn, that's why you could see them. I think they've had double digits turnovers in every one of these games. Obviously, the
No.
Celtics defense is stifling, so that's playing a factor into it. But there's a lot of unforced errors happening as well. You know,
Yeah. I think I saw it of it's Kevin Durant has 19 made shots the entire series and he has 17 turnovers in the also in the entire series, and it's like we haven't seen him struggle this much before, and things have to change. Do you want to move on to our next topic of biggest surprises in the first round?
yes.
So, I don't know, actually don't know how many you have prepared, but I will say I wanted you to go first on your biggest surprise of this first round so far. Actually, wait,
So mine,
yes, you did. We're good.
mine is comprised of player and a team. So first would be my first surprise would be obviously, and I'm sure you probably are going to speak about this individual as well. Jordan Poole. He's head and shoulders definitely someone that you have to consider for that. Um, in the games that he's played in this series at the age of 22, to being able to do this with a veteran star-studded team, the ability to put up nearly 30 points per game, shooting around 58% from the 3-point line in this game, and then a field goal percentage that's north of 60% is insane for a player the likes of, like I said, he was he was never taught it as to be um, amazing ball player that
Yeah.
came when he came to the Warriors, but being able to create himself into the player that he is currently and what he is doing is only showing how much versatility he adds to this team and how much of an additive punch he brings being a part of this team as well. Um, I love the fact that the team was able to take take it with stride. The fact that they weren't going to start, they wasn't going to start
Mhm. Steph.
Steph Curry, and they were going to allow for Jordan Poole to figure it out in those first couple games. And now look at him. Look at what he has been able to do in the series. It's only showing why they have that trust in him. And then as for team, I think my biggest surprise as a team is the Dallas Mavericks. Simply just like we mentioned, being able to have Luca be down and still be able to have an interesting series or a series where you could very well now say that they're the favorite to win
Mhm.
it, is showing to me that like this team has something that they're doing, and the construction of their team is the right type of team that, in my mind, I think that could do have a long run in the postseason. So that's my surprise team. Obviously, there's close second, but
Yeah.
I think you might have put this team as your surprise. So I'm gonna let you get to it.
Yeah. So I love the Jordan Poole pick. That is, I mean, this guy's been out of his mind. Well, first, so for my actually biggest surprise, it's probably not as much as a surprise for other people. But it's for me, it's more about Jason Tatum and the fact of how much this guy like we're really seeing like Jason Tatum become a huge superstar because he has his times in the series and the season where you can always kind of feel like who's the best player on the team. I think we could say 70% of the time is probably Jason Tatum, and then maybe Jaylen Brown has a game that he goes off or something like that. But right now, Jason Tatum playing fantastic. He's the one hitting all the big shots, the game winners, the daggers. He is playing out of his mind. Uh, I always was very high on him, but I always kind of just thought it'd just take a little bit longer. He's 24 years old right now, and he's doing this against the Brooklyn Nets. Like, it's pretty insane. I have to, I if there is one team, like I did not think that the Boston Celtics had an opportunity or would have an opportunity to even sweep the Nets, and it's really off the back of Jason Tatum right now. He's the man, and pretty surprising. And then for my surprise team, I'm actually gonna say the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves right now are a huge surprise that the fact that they even be tied with Memphis at the moment of two. Everyone was making fun of them when they won the play in and they're celebrating like they won the champions. And honestly, it was kind of funny, but like on the outside looking in, it's like you can understand like these guys are working so hard. There's so much passion here. And you kind of see that carrying on this entire time. Like Patrick Beverly, my God, this man is like everywhere. Just for a guy that like mainly focuses on defense, like he is just so impactful and huge for the team in general. Anthony Edwards playing extremely well. Jeff, I think you mentioned in one of our group chats not too long ago of this was the guy that everyone was saying, like, does he even like basketball? Does he want to play football instead? Does he want to rap instead? Does he want to do all these other things? Like, I don't know if number one pick, do you pick this guy? This guy is shutting everyone up. And then we talked about Karl Anthony Towns before, but like Minnesota stepping it up at the right time. Very surprising.
Agreed. I love your picks as well. T Wolves, if they if they're able to win this series, I would love to see what type of celebration they'll have then.
Right.
Is like you mentioned, yes, they joked about it. They joked about what they did after that play-in victory, but emotions do ring high,
Yeah.
and this is a team that hasn't won something meaningful in years. They haven't won a series since Kevin Garnett has left, so that just goes to show how long it's been
Yeah.
since they've seen winning basketball. And it's a city that's that when they are winning, they have a good fan base that will come out, that will show up and pour their hearts out for the team. So I like that pick. I really do like that pick, Brad.
Right word. So let's move on. Biggest disappointments. Jeff, who do you have as your biggest disappointments?
So biggest disappointment, I think you got to start off with player and then team, and collectively it's on the same team. Uh, it's a player and a team. So um, that player is easy to. It's easy to put this guy as the biggest disappointment right now. Is Kevin Durant. I think to truly grasp why I'm disappointed about it is, and granted, the Celtics, when you really think about it, have not changed that much from what they were last
Mhm.
season.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why I say the whole thing about the coaching is in the 2021 Eastern Conference first round that the Nets played against the Celtics in 5 games in a gentleman sweep. They were able to win. 80 was able to put 32 6, seven rebounds, and around 3 assists a game. And now, in turn, in 3 games in this series, you have him now averaging 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. That's It's almost inexcusable, like the drop off of where how he's playing from that series to this one. Granted, he's getting dogged, like he's being defended a
Yeah.
way that is incredibly, tremendously physical. And if anyone hasn't seen Katie before, you could truly tell. You could see that Katie is not the most physical guy. Like his game is predicated a lot on finesse, right?
Yep.
So cracking the code to how to defend him pretty well without fouling at the same time and still maintain that physicality is something that the Celtics have been doing pretty well in this series. And then what makes it even more disappointing is that it doesn't truly look as I think this is the same. What we're seeing kind of with the series is kind of a little bit of like just a small snapshot of moments that would happen to Katie last season. I mean, last playoffs against the Bucks, but this one it is being blown wide open because I truly feel that he's second guessing everything because he doesn't feel he has viable options on what to do or what to make this offense go. And then like a lot of it is nothing's run sets. Like nothing
Yeah.
seems like it's like sets that will get someone open. There's a lot of ball watching and ironically, Katie was ball watching in game one, and that's the reason why they lost that game. You know, and the fact that there are a lot of people are just ball watching,
Yeah.
even on offense, it made the game tremendously hard for him. And then looking back at it as well, he played in a game that they never truly had control over. He played 46 minutes
Yeah.
last night. Like, what was the point of that? Like, there was no point of that. Right now, he's averaging 43 minutes in the series. It's ridiculous
Yeah.
to have a guy coming back from injuries like he's sustained and be taking this workload and just being asked upon to honestly solve everything that's happening on the court, and no one's making life easier for him.
Yeah.
You know? Then obviously now tying the team, I don't even think there's much more to say to the team. Like the team is by far the most disappointed team in the playoffs, and is by a mile.
Yeah. Now I mean, no, everything you said is completely right. I'll just double down on that. I actually was gonna I had, of course, kind of the same thought as you. I had Kevin Durant and the Nets as my people. But to make it a little more spicy, I'm just gonna I'm winging it here. But my player would honestly be more of game two and game three, Pascal Siakam. Of during those games, he kind of, especially game three, he just disappeared when his team needed him most. I really did think that Toronto has a really good opportunity to beat Philly, and yet they needed Pascal to be a big leader there, especially with when Scotty Barnes went down. He kind of just wasn't as good as you would hope. So to me, that's a pretty big disappointment because that's like a lost opportunity. And then the next one of another lost opportunity, which I kind of mentioned before, is good. My biggest disappointment team are the Utah Jazz, and the fact that they just they needed to take advantage of this opportunity. The Jason Kidd playing Luca in that last game where it didn't matter at all. When Luca gets hurt, that is a huge blunder. And now you have this golden opportunity right in front of you to get a huge lead or close out the series or whatever you need to do. Set yourself up to get to that next round. You know, prove all the doubters wrong and all this, and yet they kind of blew it. They blew it. Their perimeter defense is atrocious. It is so bad. It is so easy for Jalen Brunson just to walk past everybody. And like it is that's kind of how their defense always has been. It's their defense. I heard this stat of like their defense with Rudy Gobert on the floor is the best defense in the entire NBA. But without him, they are just not even close. They're so bad. It's a one-man defense. And yet everyone usually puts blame on Rudy Gobert. I just always kind of been against that. Man, Utah, they're just a huge blunder. The biggest blunder I can see an NBA team has made in this playoff so far.
I agree. They definitely have been very disappointing, but I'm still thinking the Nets by a mile. You can't. We're talking
Yeah.
about a team that went from being favorites to win the
Yeah.
championship to now one game away from being swept in the first round. So that's the reason why I'm going to stay with that. But that is definitely a very good,
Yeah.
compelling number two in my mind, because they truly had an opportunity to put their foots on the necks very early on and have a series that they could have decided early and get some rest before potentially playing a team in the Suns in the second round.
Yeah, it felt like you get a really nice juicy steak right in front of you. And then Utah, instead of having this delicious meal, burns it. Like and that's exactly how it feels like to me. It's but like you're right. Definitely the Nets are number one in terms of a disappointment. But like you said, that's definitely the second though. Do you want to move on to our last topic? This was supposed to be our second, but I actually kind of like it as the last. But our predictions for the rest of these playoffs. Jeff, give me your predictions.
Okay, so I think in the interest of time, just
Yeah.
gonna run through all of them real quickly. So what I see happening in the East is Miami finds their way of making it out this first round and able to beat the Atlanta Hawks. Then we have Philly figuring it out as well, making it into the semis as well. Bucks, the other team, and then Celtics actually close out the sweep on Monday. From there, I think it's going to be a competitive series, probably go 6-7. But the deciding factor is what type of James Harden are we going to get
Yep.
in that series. And I think as a betting man now, I have not liked what I've seen from James Harden. And because of
Mhm.
that, I think I have the Miami Heat going to the Eastern Conference Finals. In the semis on the other side of things, you have the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics. And Boston Celtics look tremendous. They have a very good looking not organization team that they put together this year that could combat some of the stuff that the Bucks are doing. Not knowing this before, but now knowing this is that Middleton being injured
Mhm.
is going to have me leaning towards this being a 6 game series and the Boston Celtics figuring it out. But I will say this: if Middleton does come back, the way how I see Giannis playing, I could see also in a world where this goes to 7 and the Bucks figure it out. But I'm going to go with the Celtics for now. In the Eastern Conference Finals, we have a matchup again of the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum, I think, is going to take this one personal, rectifying some of the stuff that happened in the 2020 conference finals. Essentially, I listened to the JJ Redick podcast as well, and Bam talks about every year he sends a text to Jason Tatum, like telling him like you made this moment for me, like thank God, like I was able to do this to you, just being petty, right? I think this is the year where Jason Tatum gets to pay him back for that, and the Boston Celtics in 5 games beat the Miami Heat.
Oh,
Um, now heading out west, the Phoenix Suns make easy work of the Pelicans in my mind from this point forward. I think it's going to be in 5, gentlemen sweep. Love what I've seen from the Pelicans, but I still think the Suns have a certain amount of firepower that they can't match. After game 3, I felt 100% about that, and feel that that's how it's going to go. Now looking at the Dallas Utah series, this is definitely going to 7, but I got the Dallas Mavericks pulling it out and beating the Utah Jazz. Then we have the Golden State Warriors and the Denver match. Once again, we find another sweep and make easy work of them. And the last series, the most competitive series in the playoffs, in my mind, I have the Grizzlies pulling it out in game 7 to make it to the semifinals. In the Phoenix and Dallas series, I think this one will also go to 7 and will put the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals. Luca obviously still being cautious about his injury, and if he's able to stay healthy, I think that what he brings with this team and how Jalen Brunson has looked, the 3-man guard rotation that they have with Dinwiddie will be too much for the Suns, and the Suns being without Devin Booker is why I think in 7 they would beat them. And Now going on to the other side of the bracket for the semis, the Warriors easily make quick work of the they make quick work of the Grizzlies in 5. In my mind, I think, like I mentioned, too much firepower for them to be able to truly answer the bill on this one for the Grizzlies and make it an interesting series. I think 5 is all they'll be able to get to. Now going into Western Conference Finals, we're looking at the Dallas Mavericks and the Warriors. Um, Prediction has to change a little bit because now at the level that I'm seeing the Warriors, what the Warriors are doing, um, I think that they will be the ones that will be representing the Western Conference, and they will be winning it in 6 games. As the Mavericks would put up a real fight, they'll be able to, I think, eke out a few games um, early on in the series to make it look interesting, and then the Warriors just take it to the next year and being a team that has that championship prowess and experience, they will figure it out and make it to the championship. And my 2 teams in the finals are now the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors. I don't want to say this, but we're going to be looking at a four-time champion, Steph Curry, and he'll finally be able to take his finals MVP trophy that he so coveted and enter him into the territory of GOAT conversation as he would win this game, win the series. I think it's gonna be pretty quick actually. I think if not a sweep, it will be in five that they beat the Celtics and Steph Curry will finally get that finals MVP. Unless
Wow.
if Jordan Poole just goes and wins it like
Yeah,
that,
right.
gets the
Jordan Poole
finals MVP.
steals it from him.
Fate of the universe. You gotta let Jordan Poole take the shot.
I like that. Yeah. Now Andre Iguodala comes back and um so actually surprisingly, I'm not too different from you, especially on the east side. On the west
Mhm.
side, there definitely is some differences. So because this whole entire time, my picks early to win the entire thing was always the Warriors and the Nets to be in the championship in the finals. Now, since the Nets are not in there, sadly, or
Dunzo.
yeah, they're essentially donezo. It's just kind of the team that beat them kind of gets that spot. So essentially, everything you said on the East side, uh, I'm not going to repeat because we had the same exact outcomes. So Boston takes the East, and then for the West, I did have so we're essentially the same outcome, but where I'm really different. So right now, you mentioned Phoenix, Pelicans. Phoenix takes it. I have Phoenix in five, so I don't think Pelicans are gonna get another win. Dallas, Utah, and Dallas, Utah. I actually think Dallas in seven. I think we had the same thing here. Warriors, Denver, Warriors in four, and then Memphis in Minnesota. Even though I said that Minnesota is my biggest surprise, I'm actually going to say Memphis in six, though. Not in seven or anything like that, but Memphis in six. So the next round, we're going to have Phoenix versus Dallas. You actually have Dallas taking over this win. I'm actually different from you. I think this is a Phoenix in six. I just think I at least I also believe that Devin Booker will probably be back in that matchup. But even without him, man, Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, all those guys, DeAndre Ayton, as we see, DeAndre Ayton kind of steps it up when Devin Booker isn't there. When there's a little more room for him to shine, DeAndre Ayton really kind of steps up. And so that's where I think Phoenix takes it over. Warriors versus Memphis. I think that's a Warriors in five. I just think they're just too good. And then, like I said, I kind of have my concerns about Memphis, even though I still have them beating Minnesota. So next, it would be the finals between our Western Conference finals between Phoenix and Golden State. This is like I said, we had the same outcome. I actually say Golden State in six. I I put some respect on Phoenix name. I really think Phoenix is very good, but man, Golden State is just too good. And then you had a finals of Boston, Golden State. I have the same thing. You said Golden State in five. I'm kind of gonna go. I feel like I guess it's maybe a cop out or a safe option, but I'm gonna say Golden State in six. Like it's just I don't know if there's really I think Boston's very good. I think they can do some pretty cool things on defense, especially with like Marcus Smart and all that. And then especially too like Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, all these guys are fantastic defenders. But still the off-ball movement is just too crazy for Golden State right now, and they get so many good shots and I just I I've said it in the beginning of the year because this was always my thought process. And my thought process actually didn't really include Jordan Poole being this good, but I just thought, you got Klay Thompson coming back, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, like it's those guys are just so hard to beat. And then now the X factor in Jordan Poole, Warriors in the championship. So it's I mean, I guess, we have a lot of the same thought process because we're talking every week and we're doing all this, but
Yeah.
no, I'm excited to see how this actually turns out and if one of our teams just gets knocked out real fast and like Milwaukee,
I
we're
would,
both have losing.
yeah, I would love to have like surprises.
Yeah.
But I think that this kind of ironclad. This
Yeah.
looks like it's going to be the finals matchup. And it should be interesting when we get there to see how accurate we were in our decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited for that. But yeah, we both have Milwaukee losing. I do agree with you of like the Chris Middleton injury is probably going to be too big. Boston's getting Robert Williams back and up and running. Like it's going to be very hard and like yeah, it's just there's a reason why Boston's the best defense in the NBA right now. And we see them executing it extremely well against the super firepower Nets and all that. And it's yeah, it's very surprising to me. So
Great.
yeah, this is yeah, another fun one. Another fun one. I'm excited to see the outcomes of all this first round. Is the first round going to be over by the next time we record?
I believe it should be, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Unless if like a series goes to 7.
Yeah, yeah.
And that could be Dallas or Grizzlies will be the last 2 teams we could possibly be talking about. But I think we will be talking about we will have enough to talk about the second round of the playoffs when that comes around into our next episode.
For sure. Well, yeah, man, it's been fun. Do you want to have anything you want to say before we close it out?
Oh man, it's been a hell of a year. Can't wait to see the culmination of these playoffs and talk it through with all of you listeners. And once the Nets lose and with other teams, I'll be this therapeutic. I give you guys this therapeutic session as well. To talk about some of the things that we think some of the losing teams should consider in the offseason and help their organizations to potentially hold up that land, Larry O'Brien, in the near future.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited already because I'm doing so much thinking because I'm a sucky Knicks fan and they're so bad and I hate it. But I'm always thinking of what's next? What can we do next? So I'm very excited for that. But again, this playoffs have been extremely competitive. And I love to see like especially like a Memphis and Minnesota 2-7 matchup actually being tied at 4 games in so far. So really, really exciting. Yeah, we have a lot more to cover going forward. So a lot of fun. Follow the Twitter, follow the YouTube, subscribe to YouTube, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. The good stuff. But yeah, this has been episode 28.